later on as a clinical health and neuropsychologist. At the same time, he studied composition at the University of Vienna. He completed his doctorate in natural sciences and psychology at the University of Salzburg, and in 2009 he expanded his artistic and educational skills by completing a master's degree in elemental music and movement education at the University of Salzburg. In his master thesis, he analyzed Luigi Nono's masterpiece piece, No High Caminos, Heike Kamenar, Petrakowski. Not English, it's part.
Yes, there are always a lot of
No High Caminos, Heike Kamenar. Erik Sterbauer also worked, I guess it's written correctly.
yes.
Also worked for 20 years as a clinical psychologist with children and families, as well as people with disabilities, and was a research assistant specializing in neuropsychology at the Christian Doctor Clinic at Salzburg. 2016, he began working as university assistant to the Department of Music Education and as assistant professor in the area of music in dance and inclusion and diversity at the ORF Institute at the University Salzburg. ORF is something different.
That might also be institute.
ORF is legislation. So, Professor Sterbauer.
Thanks to Johannes for all those details that you can forget now. Van de Rede, just to bring in all the languages we have now to listen to. Dear listeners, dear audience, I'm very delighted to be here today at this very special symposium and to present to you one of my latest researches. Besides my work in elemental music and dance education, something really different to this group now, I have been engaged with topics of new music, ethnic musicology, and so on. And this time I will refer to you to some of my specialities in music of Luigi Nono. Following the last year's centenary of Luigi Nono's birth, another prominent figure on the folklore avant-garde emerging from the Darmstadt school would celebrate his 100th birthday, Pierre Boulez. And this led me to take a look on a dedicated composition of Nono for Boulez, which is also has some aspects of microtonality. That's why I'm now here. My presentation will explore on diverse levels the origin, the genesis, the compositional structure, and the sound conception of the piece Pierre. On the basis of the sketches that are preserved in the Archivio Luigi Nono in Venice. Additionally, it tries to discover traces of Nono's thinking or imaging of Boulez in the dedicatory composition. Luigi Nono and Pierre Boulez first have met in 1952. There is something missing. Now we are right. In Darmstadt, and Nono went to Paris, and this and the following year with the director Hermann Scherchen to visit Pierre Schäffer in the studio and also to talk to Pierre Boulez. The relationship between Nono and Boulez was starting with a friendship based on common ideas on the further, or better said, the new development of music in the early 1950s. One of the first expressions of that friendship was the dedication of Nono's composition Canti per Tredici in 1955 in the words "A Pierre Boulez et la sua humanità," so to say, Pierre Boulez and his humanity. Nono's political engagement and his position of art as an ever political means found himself later as a counterpoint to Boulez's strict apolitical, yes even unassociative approach. In 1969 we find Nono in his utmost political engagement, and by this also breaking up relationships of earlier times. So it was said that Nono has withdrawn his dedication of Boulez of the Cantigat Elegy, but the choirmaster Brutus Gottwald tells us that he has asked Nono in the 80s, before performance of those canti, regarding his withdrawal, and Nono confirmed the dedication. The dedication was also never deleted from this course, but it was not until his last decade when Nono really was renewing his friendship with Boulez again. During that period, Nono has finished his opus magnum of the Spätwerk, the opera, or better said, Azione Scenica, Prometeo, in 1984, a huge work, an opera just for listening, where he was expanding compositional techniques and sound conceptions through the use of live electronics, sound research, and microtonal ideas. The experiences and further findings of the compositional process of Prometeo and earlier works resulted in a brief and concise form in the piece for Boulez's 16th birthday, A Pierre dell'azzurro silenzio, inquietum. Before going deeper into the work's different aspects, I want to give you a short synopsis. The title, A Pierre, which can be translated in English as For Pierre, from the blue silence, restless, is, as many of Nono's titles, especially in the late work, where we can trace a lot of associations with it, not really knowing where it really comes from. The subtitle A Più Cori refers to the Venetian tradition of cori spezzati that was introduced by Giovanni and Andrea Gabrieli, which were organists in San Marco Basilica in Venice in the 16th century, using the different empores in the church for the spatial effects. These ideas also incorporated in A Pierre on a different level, as you will see later on. The finishing date of the composition is the 22nd of February of 1984-5. The dedication to Boulez is mentioned as A Pierre Boulez for the 26th of March 1985. This was the 16th birthday. There also exists a critical edition now from the year 1996, which was made by André Richard and Marco Mazzolino. The piece had its world premiere in Baden-Baden, Germany in March 1985 at a homage concert for Pierre Boulez, and the musicians were Roberto Fabriciani and Giro Scalaboni, and Luigi Nono himself with Hans-Peter Haller from the Experimentalstudio, the Heinrich-Strobel-Stiftung des Südwestfunks. They did their work as sound directors of the live electronics. During the final decade of Nono in the 1980s, he dedicated significant effort to exploring and studying new sounds that could be generated by acoustic instruments. Many extraordinary playing techniques and diverse combinations of registers and specific aspects like volume dynamics or physically or electronically enhancements have been invented by this. For this vision of new sounds, Luigi Nono was supported by a very engaged group of collaborators. This group evolved over time and included various musicians such as the already mentioned Roberto Fabriciani, a flutist, Georg Scarboni, a clarinetist, Giancarlo Scaffini, a tubist, or Susanne Otto as contralto. This is now very good that we also hear the sounds from the church coloring this presentation. But there were also sound engineers like Hans-Peter Haller, Alvise Vidolin, or Rudolf Strauss, or technicians like Bernd Noll and Andreas Breitscheid, all from the Experimental Studio, who did a lot of input for Luigi Nono's work. Some key collaborators like André Richard played integral roles in various elements of the compositional projects. Together, as a group, they delved into real-time microtonal sound manipulation, the spatial dissemination of sounds, and also the performer's role in the process. So the compositional process was not the idea of one single person, but a participative work of many collaborators that Nono merged or molded into the composition. The leader of the Experimental Studio, Hans-Peter Haller, sums it up when he says, Nono required his interpreters to participate in the same active way as he himself did. The creative process resulting in Pierre took place between September 1984 and February 1985, and began during new rehearsals for the first performance of the opera Prometeo in 1984. Roberto Fabriciani, the flutist, recalls suggesting to Nono that he should write a work based on Prometeo or a part of it, because he felt that the live electronic potential explored in the work was not completely exploited. Decisive for its genesis, however, was a situation in the Experimental Studio, where a rehearsal was planned between flutist Roberto Fabriciani, the clarinetist Georg Scarboni, engineer Hans-Peter Haller, and Nono himself. And Nono arrived late at this rehearsal, then initially listening unnoticed to the attempts of the studio director and the tuning musicians trying out new ideas. Here you can see one of the first sketches for this piece, where we can notice the working title Pensieri a Pierre. And even the instrumentation of bass flute, that's FB for the flauta basso, and the contrabass clarinet, indicated here as CKB. The piece is written for contrabass flute in G, contrabass clarinet in B flat, and live electronics. The autograph and the printed score show the instrument notation in transposed form, so the written pitch is not the heard one. Here you can see an excerpt where Nono has indicated that. The contrabass flute in G is written an octave and a perfect fourth above sounding pitch, and the contrabass clarinet in B flat is written 2 octaves and a major second above sounding pitch. Trying to follow a correct performance, just looking at the score, is challenging because so much of the work is not mentioned, not notated. Notably the microtonal manipulations and the spatial presentation of the sound. Only a few sounds of the emitted by the 2 instruments are real ordinary pitches. Most require some form of extended instrumental technique, mixtures of breath and sound, suoni ombra, that's something like a shadow sound, where the overtones are produced and the basic tone is like a shadow, sometimes coming to the foreground. Also whistling while playing and other multiphonics. The notation tells the performance what to do and when, but it does not show the musical outcome. On the pictures we see the 2 instrumentalists, Fabriciani on flute and Scarboni on the clarinet, with Nono in the studio searching for new sounds. At this time, it was in 1981 for das atmende Klarsein. But those three have been working together for a long, long time, and also for Pierre. As many of Nono's late works, live electronics play an important and integral role there. In the rehearsal mentioned before, when Nono played, Hans-Peter Haller recorded audio signals from the contrabass flute and the contrabass clarinet and played them back with a delay time. That's really interesting. He tried to determine the temporal limit up to which a perceived source sound in its original form can no longer remember exactly. This limit was reached at about 24 seconds in the case of unchanged repetition. This 24-second threshold emerged as a necessary time span to perceive a repeated sound event as new and thus no longer connected to its source. Haller tells us, the result of further experiments showed that this psychological process of listening depends on the sound color, on rhythmical forms, and the location of sound of the replay. So I have changed the repeated sequences of tones, selected the sound with band-pass filters, and mixed in some reverberations. The result was stunning. The time limit could be shortened about half, so about to 12 seconds, as Haller tells us. So a filtered, repeated event was perceived as new only after 12 seconds. The sonic results inspired Nono directly and led to the disposition of the live electronics in Pierre. From a technical point of view, the live electronics used in the piece have a rather simple setup, consisting of two harmonizers for one minor seventh down and a tritone down, two delays, also already mentioned 12 and 24 seconds, a bank of 3 band-pass filters, a reverb section, 4 loudspeakers for all 4 corners of the room, and 4 dynamic microphones, 2 for each instrument. Here you can see the circuits of how the setup should be done in form of the notes of Hans-Peter Haller from the sketches from the Archivio in Venice, and an illustration of the bandpass filters from the score. For pitch shifting, a Publison DHM89BQ was used, a very old machine, right from the 1980s. The reverb was created by the Publison Infernal machine. So the entire electronic setup for Pierre is done for an initial sound event that is filtered and presented 12 seconds later, and presented again, unaltered, again 24 seconds after its original exposition. An interesting idea. Next to the technical setup, the process of finding ideas and new sounds, Nono often also has written associative texts accompanying his pieces without giving explanations of the work or the structure. So Nono also has written 2 texts relating to Pierre. One of them is a short and very Nononian poetic description. In English, it sounds like diverse choirs continuously changing, performance of voices, timbres, interdynamic spaces, and some possibilities of transformation through live electronics. But before we are going on, we should take a beer at the piece we are talking about. I've prepared 2 recordings made with the same musicians, one from the world premiere recording and one of the 1991 release that was still supervised by Nono. We hear the beginning of about 40 seconds, and still here we can hear the difference that arises even with the same performance. And we are lucky that they have made a break, so we can listen without any interruption. Second recording. As I said, it's not easy to follow the sounds in the score because after 12 seconds you get the first delayed altered sounds, after 24 seconds you get again the sounds produced at the beginning. But you get used to that. So now we take an analytic view of the piece. The composition up here consists of 60 bars, referring to the 60th birthday of Boulez. It is written in 4/4 in a very slow tempo of 30. The dynamics are all in a very quiet mode, reaching from 5-fold piano to mezzo forte with 2 bars of forte. There are 13 fermatas, also a very important thing for Nono in his late work, and only very few bars are written even without pauses. So nearly every bar in finds breaks. And the instrumentalists play mostly in the highest registers. The greatest difficulty in performing the piece is indeed in perfecting the instrumental techniques. In the part of the two soloists, a continuous variety of emission modes is required, from the sounding ordinary emission to that in which air noise prevails, while variable presence and absence of determined pitches. Then overtones called aeolian sounds, or the sounds with additional whistling or multiphonics have to be produced. Harmonic bichords, where sometimes the fundamental sounds of the bichords should also appear as an intermittent called discontinuous shadow sounds. Also aperiodic tremolos, air and tone continuous. Each bar calls for a new unorthodox technique. And all sounds produced must have that characteristic internal spectral and dynamic mobility. The natural sounds of the instruments in this composition have to become completely fused with the electronically processed ones. And this fusion should create a kind of confusion in the listener. Santini points out that a very important secret for the performance is that the instruments should play as close as possible to the microphone, while at the same time constantly changing positions, likely to affect the external mobility of the sound. Two dynamic microphones must be used on each instrument to capture a sufficient amount of the natural tonal resonances, low end and air emission. And the instrumental performers have to fully understand what happens in the electronic process and interact with it as they play. Next to the original idea of transforming the sounds, live electronics also had to make the sounds of the instruments perceptible. Because we have heard five-fold piano is something in the room maybe could not even be heard from every point of listening. So the recorded sound becomes part of the overall sound. This all is mediated, of course, by dynamic intervention. In the first diagram, we see the dynamic curve of the front and back speakers, and below the initial setup of the potentiometers for the live electronics. So we can see the possible auditory landscape. For example, the very reluctant harmonized output for letter E, or the harmonized sounds are processed. With the delay, the sound of the instrument is heard even when the soloist is silent. And we recognize an aspect of the fusion of instruments and electronics that is decisive in the piece. And as you have maybe already mentioned, the rain has come. In combination of the instrumental sounds with the two delays, altered after 12 and natural after 24 seconds, the electronics create something like a 6-part system in which a layer of two original voices is imitated twice, reminiscent of the principle of a double canon. The music text is designed for such a transformation, but the canon itself is neither visible in it, nor does the tonal result reveal the structure of the composition. The instruction that the musicians should remain in their playing position even during pauses, with the instrument holding like as if they were playing, supports the aesthetics of a continuum of sound events in which neither acoustically nor visually a discrimination of the original from the electronically generated sound is possible. With such procedures, Nono ties in with his earlier preferences for enigmatic canons, and at the same time to the basic principles of the Darmstadt school. In this respect, Nono drew on a common starting point with Boulez by appropriating a piece for him, as is anecdotally reported, in which his friend, known as a congenial music listener, should and had to understand what was going on structurally. But through these transformation processes, Nono wanted to disguise the structure for the analytical thinking friend. I think because of time we switch the listening part. We have one more that comes later on. Now let's take a look at the evolution of the piece by means of the sketches from the Archivio Luigi Nono in Venice. Similar to another sketch we have seen before, here we see now the final title and again notes on the instruments plus the musicians Nono was thinking about. The next sketch shows us ideas on pitches which has been taken from an earlier composition, in fact the part of Prometeo. Also we can see mentioned the idea of the chordal spezzati here as choralita a due written out. The next sketch shows us the overall structure of the piece with 60 bars, and some bars where we see rests inside the lines, in fact for the clavinet. Here we have different pitches and rhythms already put into distinctive groups with numbers showing the timeline, all with added playing techniques of the contrabass clarinet. And on another page of the, we see the serial row, let us say the melodic progress of the contrabass clarinet. Below in red is written for B, for FB, bass flute, and CKB, which means contrabass clarinet, and live electronics. Now there is already the first draft of the instrumental parts with a lot of annotations concerning playing techniques, pitches. Pitches are also written out as numbers, sound durations, and so on. The second draft of the score now takes responsibility of the dynamics, which was left out until now. All in red, now here is marked different shades of volume in the piece. Also we find an insertion of the phonatas in purple and numbers for the durations of the sounds, counted in crotchets. At the bottom there is a new idea for the title, Pensieri, Altri, a Pierre, other thoughts of Pierre. The third draft now looks like a fair copy with some annotations and corrections. Some more interpretation remarks you can see here, like con eoli and lenti, or also annotations by the musicians are given here. So also the musicians have written to this fair copy. And at the end, we find the date of finalization in February 1985. Finally, there is the definitive title here in this two papers. Most interesting is that the ultimate fair copy you can find 4 bars without notation, but annotations from Nono and the engineer Hans-Peter Haller. In this stage, Nono integrates a letter to the fair copy of the autograph, where Nono speaks of his hope that this sounds here, with the arrow pointing to the first page, will tell Boulez something. Also, there we can find a drawing of the schematics of live electronics in Nono's own writing, which copies exactly the one of Hans-Peter Haller we have seen before. And we can find the dedication on this page. This is just for you as an illustration how Nono has done all those things. This page is a page of the definitive score, which was possessed by the flutist Roberto Fabriciani with annotations, for example, for the fingerings, and which was also used in many performances, as we can see here, because Fabriciani has notated every performance he has done with that piece. Now, before we enter the last section, where we will take a short look on new analytical methods, I want to have another short listening excerpt out of the middle of the piece. And you can see here some spectrogram and graphic illustration of the peak frequencies. doesn't matter because I think this was the last step. So it was shortened a little bit, but you could hear the different sound quality, sound productions made out of this cell. In the last 10 years, we have had an enormous growth in new electronic methods of analyzing sounds and space. And I'm sure that in the moment, new methods are developed, that we will have new tunes on our side the next time. But for now, I want to show you just a few examples of the recent years directly applied on Pierre. A short spectrogram of the last listening experience you've already seen in the last slide. The ambisonic encoding I will have to leave out now because of time, but as I have seen in the program, Martin Ritter is present in the Symposium, and so he could give us some information later on because he has done a lot of research on his website, especially on Pierre, or you look at the website where there's a lot of material to this topic. But now I'm going to show you a spectrographic analysis that was done by Boulez in 2018. Here there is a graphic black and white representation of the complete concept of chord performance that was done specific for this research. And here we see another spectrographic analysis where the two parts of flute and clarinet are taken apart, visualized also in a manual transcription here is made below. The flute is blue and the clarinet in green. Another example of spectrographic or spectral analysis was done by Salis, also in 2018 with the same specific performance that was done for this research. The slide shows us the frequencies of the flute in green and the clarinet in blue. The dark ones are the directly played ones. The light ones are the delayed, so from the 12 and 24 seconds delays. On the next analysis we see in orange the harmonized frequencies, and in red the ones created by filters, only for a section of 17 to 30. There is also a website connected to this where you can see this and also listen to those recordings. And here is a full spectrum of the whole performance. These analytical methods are trying to help us to understand more deeply the intentions and therefore the sonic results that may have been in the composer's mind. They may also help us in finding best solutions for further interpretations and maybe also for historical conformity practice. We have to say that now for pieces in the 80s maybe. At this point, I want to return to the beginning of our journey and my trials to reflect the compositional process and put a flashlight on the relationship between Nono and Boulez. Peter Scottwald, the choir leader, writes in his essay Nono, Boulez and the Ideas of Perfection that Nono never seriously questioned Boulez's way of composing. Perhaps even he may have admired it. This was only possible because he still felt a kinship with Boulez in terms of musical thinking that began in the 1950s. Scottwald writes, Boulez music does not persuade the listener, nor does it seek to take them by surprise with expressive flailing. What it spreads is more than just an aura of freedom. an appearance that could turn out to be more deceptive in the face of musical reality. And it does not presuppose the connoisseur as a listener who is able to follow the structural progressions effortlessly, but rather an adult person, educated or not, who is willing to make use of the freedom that the music grants him, namely the freedom to let the music arise once again in his head, and weighed differently, namely as his own. Perhaps that is what Luigi Nono meant when he wrote Der la sua umanità. And so our Pierre seems to create a prismatic image of Boulez on the one side, a puzzle and enigma for the listener, a portrait that seems to vanish away and being in contradiction to Boulez's contourous activities, but at the same time a colorful representation of his various aspects.
I'd like to use the last words, a colorful representation. It was a wonderful representation and brilliant analysis of his work. I never heard about it from up to this, his birthday, but now I'm convinced it must be very interesting to listen to a performance now.
Yes, now as you also have, those people who might stay very long here in Salzburg could have, and those who are in Salzburg, they have the possibility because at the Salzburg Festspiele, this year they have a party in the festival that's called Pierre, because there's one birthday with a lot of concerts. And in one of these concerts, Pierre from Nono will be performed.
Oh, thank you for
I'm not sure when it is. Should I look it up? But I can tell you later on if you are interested.
That's very interesting. Yeah, thank you very much. Wow. I believe it's not necessary to present Georg Vogel, who is best known to us, well known from many symposia we had in the last years. He always had been here and educated music with his 31 tune system. And with a song with Sacellum, you had been here, I think, 2 years ago, and 5 years ago, and 6 years ago. It was the first time. So 6 years ago. So, and I remember every piece from here, born 1988. As an instrumentalist, keyboard instrumentalist and composer. He will present now his instrument, Claviton. I think this is Claviton did not exist 2 years ago. You presented it the first in November in Vienna, I think, of 2023.
It was built 2022.
22? All right. Yes, get built, but when did you
Not
present it to the public in Vienna? It was, I think, in November 23, or no, December, in this time, in Vienna at the high school, at the university.
Yeah.
And we'll hear his instrument out at the first time. And he's a member of several ensembles. Symposium has been here in Salzburg. Three, Georg, Elias Stimmeseder, Vogel and others. Latest releases include some albums like Nourish, that's fine, so that's like National in English, Nourish, Zilton and Touraufnahme and others. Piano Livre too. Well, you can read it, there are several publishing albums by him, and there's is a builder of an Enharmonic keyboard, an instrument based on split sharps. For example, the 31 tone M Claviton, that's the instrument here. We'll hear it, and you'll find further informations in the internet, Georg Vogel. So, when you're ready,
Yeah, almost.
we may begin. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for this introduction. I'm very happy being here presenting new works for Claviton and voice. And this is brand new, and we have not performed pieces yet. So I will kind of show existing pieces, but also give insights to the process we're going to write this time. Elina Viluma, she's the singer I'm collaborating with for this project. So at the beginning, some little introductory words. The instrument, this is the Claviton 31-tone keyboard. I did in my workshop in Vienna a few years ago, and as part of a series of many instruments I'm building at this time, starting 10 years ago, there are acoustic, electric, and digital instruments, all based on split sharps keyboard design. That means based on the expanded mean tone keyboard layout with different keys for sharps and flats. So for composing, I was very much fascinated of this diasis based tonal system. So as we heard before, it's always about finding compromise between fifths and thirds. In this case, it's about tempered fifths and pure major thirds. And the value of changing the enharmonic is the way to reach the higher prime regions of the harmonic series. I will go into this more detailed after a few pages of this presentation. So you can see the title, Ich bin der Wind, and the first two parts of this piece. It's a piece for accompanying Claviton, four voice, and doubling the lead melody of the singer. So, as mentioned before, the Claviton is very much connected to the ensemble of C-tone with Davidon on 31-tone guitar and Valentin Turin on drum set. We've been collaborating for the last 10 years at least, and I was very much pushed forward to compose and also to practice in multitonal and 30-tone per-octave tonalities by collaborating with these great musicians. David composed for me, and I composed for David, so this was the process of the last years. And in the year of 2017, I was honored to be part of the Symposium here in Salzburg at the University of Boulez, and I presented the paper of tuning the notes of the piece T-tone by ear. And this piece T-tone, which also gave the name to the 31-tone ensemble, is the initial piece of this ensemble, and also the initial piece of the new cycle of songs I want to go in detail right now. So this piece T-tone is in fact a development out of a field recording transcription. And this field recording was made in Western Africa a few decades ago, and I found it very interesting because of many aspects. Because it's kind of a 7-limit just intonation on a balafon, combined with metric modulations in the performance. And in the presentation in the year of 2017, I showed how the tonality is constructed of, and the most important facts about this, it is 7-limit based. It means the interval of 8 to 7 was the most constitutive interval of this. So you see 8 to 7 and then in the fourth, the inversion, which is 7 to 6. Then you see 3 unit whole step, 9 to 8, and then again 8 to 7. Or the septimal inversion, 49 to 48, which is the A sharp. In this case, you see the visualization based on mean tone temperament. I have a lot of discussions with David. He's a guitar player. He says this kind of notation works for some situations, but not in every case, because it's not an intonation notation. It's based on the diatonic expansion of the chain of fourths of the tetrahedral hexachords. So you see a E double flat. In fact, it's a raised D. It means a greater whole tone compared to the 9 to 8. What I prefer in this case is also kind of a tabulature visualization of the keys of the Claviton. You have the chance afterwards if you want to have a look at. I know where the position of the E double flat is, so I prefer this one. Also, the advantage is that you don't have any additional accidentials, such as quarter tone or any others. But meanwhile, on my point of view, this has changed. But in those times, I was very strict about this. Okay, this is the first row, and it's kind of a pentatonic scale with some added notes. That means the intervals involved occur also in some other transpositions. I have a lot of delay on this keyboard, but I can show you the sounds. They use on this parlophone and find the representation in this 31-tone system, which is working very well for just intonation approximation, at least for 7 limit harmony, but also with some pseudo approximations going even further to the 11th harmonic or 13th. So in this case, it's just focusing on the 7, the limit of 7, and after that, I also found some neutral thirds coming out of this. Which was opening the door to third based harmonies with new intonations. So triad-based harmony. Claviton. I was playing it on a 12-key instrument, which led to very bizarre fingerings, but always having just a selection of 12 notes out of 31 per octave. And within this frame, I began to explore kind of intuitively, although I did not know every enharmonic intonation at the beginning. So it was kind of a defined field within I was exploring intuitively. Okay, this is the part of the piece of the tritone piece in F double flat, Utzis or in F double flat, which is focusing on the triad-based harmony with the neutral thirds. So as some of you may know, in 31 it's 11 to 9, as we already heard today. 11 to 9 is the most precise approximation of the neutral third in 31, which sounds like this. And I was experimenting with some cadenza. some ways how to make a development And circulating around these movements. And then I had fun writing a very long arrangement for these ideas, always differently resolving. And there was a very special bar in this arrangement, the very last with the red brackets. And after some years, so we played this a couple of years, and we always discussed this bar to be very special, and almost never played precisely because there were so many miracles inside. And then a few years later, at least 5 years, I thought I want to learn this bar and really understand what's going on, and therefore I will make a study. So I took just this last part of this roll, and with this sounds like this. I took this and I thought, what about repeating it and changing the voices and making transpositions? And there is also a very special tradition for learning to be fluent in all 31 enharmonic positions and go through the cycle of 31 pitches by every interval. So of course you can go by the fifth, then you have the chain of the fifths going through all positions like C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, and so on. And then you make 8 enharmonic change and returning at the flat side. But since 31 is a prime number, you can go through all pitches via every interval. So you can make 31 major thirds, 31 minor thirds, 31 septimal seventh, and so on. And of course, it's a very great challenge to take a little motif and then transpose it to every position. And by a certain formula. In this case, I was thinking of this esempio della circolazione. So there are some compositions by Ascanio Maione in the 16th century, and he made some studies transposing one motif through 31 keys. And then I thought, okay, the rhythm is a little too fast with this tempo and also the short long distribution. I made a little change and had 2 different lengths of the long, and so it's basically 5, 5, 3, 5, and the first 5 is turned into a 6. And then it's a rhythmic cycle of 19, counted 6 ninth notes, and then 5, and plus 3 is kind of an 8, bar of 8 ninth notes, and then adding 5 at the end. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Oh, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So it sounds like this. Oh, that's the delay. Okay. So that's the formula of transposition. The soprano. So the bar is played once, and then again with the same rhythm, but the voices are changing up. So the soprano becomes the bass becomes the tenor to alto, alto to soprano, and at the same time transposed up of perfect fourth. And then the intervals of the second bar internally are the same, but it goes somewhere else in terms of the harmonic progression. So this is bar 3 and bar 4, and it's 4 times transposable to reach the same position of the beginning, because it's a 4-voice situation. So, for instance, bass in the first repetition is the bass, in the second it's the tenor, in the third it's the alto, and in the fourth it's the soprano, and in the fifth it's the bass again. So it's a period of 4 bars, and after 4 bars it's a minor 6 higher. Which is a 5-4 perfect pure third down. So the first 4 repetitions create a transposition of a major third down, then the next 4 2 major thirds, and the next 4 again 4 major thirds. And so on. So it would go through all 31. And at the beginning I did the transposition for all 31 positions, but I found out it would last more than 5.5 minutes, and that's too long. Also, it's too hard to learn, I thought. So let's make it a little shorter, and I found out it's a very good point to shorten this is when it reaches the enharmonic changed pitch. So the 1, the step or the function of 1 of is A double sharp, and then going the fourths up, D double sharp, and so on. Then the repetition starts again at F double sharp, then at D sharp, B, that's the series of the descending major thirds. And the fourth repetition of the last one, the B flat, is the enharmonic change of the first one. So I thought, well, this could be a cycle, and at the end of the cycle there's just enharmonic change, and then I can start again. And at the end I added a little interlude, and this interlude in fact comes from what is happening in the Triton piece at the end. And what needs to be in every Triton piece is 31 tone enharmonic notes and whole number ratios for metric modulation. And I thought to include also this aspect, I use this B part for the metric modulation aspect. The written keeps being persistent until this interlude, and this interlude sounds like, as you will hear, I will play the recording right now, sounds like the rhythm is breaking, and it's kind of a solo moment for the accompanist. In fact, it's all written precisely, and it's based on triplet modulations. So it's a 9th bar we have seen, so 9th note means the triplet of a triplet, and the reduction in B is reducing the triplet, and then it's just triplets. So it's about 3-3, and then it's reducing the triplets again, and then it's coming to the 3-4 bar, keeping the 3-4 bar, and in order to get to the tempo of the beginning again, you need to establish 2 times the triplets again. So that's what's happening in the last row. We see the 3-3 bar with the triplets, and then the 2/9 bar, and then it's already the tempo of the beginning. No place. A little insights on the instruments I use. This is the keyboard of the acoustic Claviton. So the acoustic Claviton is an instrument of about and 1 meter and 80 centimeters long length. It's foot acoustic, it's kind of a 12-foot instrument. It's 1/5 down sounding, so all the notes we've seen so far don't sound in this pitch, but a fifth lower, which also works perfectly for the singer. Just a few words on the lyrics. I don't know why, but these words really work perfect with the melodic rhythm of the piece. And first I found the first 4 rows, and then the other ones. Actually, it works well for going to bed, for instance, for grown-ups, also for children. Okay. Here you can see how all voices look like for the first 8. That's 4 times, as you know from before the first transposition is happening, and every part of these, it's 5 parts, is the same, starting from the same voice distribution again. So you see 4 rows, and it's 4 times transposed by perfect fourth, and then again a major third down, starting in the ring all the time. Now we want to listen to the recording. Yeah. So what we just heard is the acoustic Claviton with the singer. And now some insights about the process of learning. Learning the melody for the singer. Actually, this kind of notation can be very confusing because you don't see the ascending and descending pitches. At the same time, since it's always repeating, there's also a likelihood that you can approach it
intuitively. Yeah. At the end, probably it's a mixture of both. So you can see there are the intervals of 31. It's a code that you can learn, and I was hoping to find collaborators that are willing to do so. At the same time, I know that this very strategical view on everything is just something that concerns the piano player, also the guitar. The guitarist the most, not so much the instruments that are adaptive with the intonation. But I use the 31 notes as my basic system of reference. So that's maybe a difference to many other, let's say, microtonal pieces, because 31 has the microtonality as a result, and it's perfectly working as a basic system of reference. There are two semitones inside, there is a neutral step, and there are all other intervals you are familiar functionally from the 12-tone system, but differently intonated. And, okay. But I'm also willing to make a compromise in order to have it in a different way, that the interpreter is able to read whether the melody goes up or down. So you can see the first row shows the enharmonic notation, and the second one is this method of notating 31 with ordinal accidentials. So you see ich, for instance, the very first pitch, it's a high D. It's visualizable as a high D, but for me it's a E double flat, because that's the key on the Claviton. The second bin, it's a D double sharp, which is almost an E, which is a diasis changed E. And I don't know if it helps so much, because the very first step is a half step. In the key of D double sharp. So the key, of course there is a key of every bar, but those chords are altered by a diasis. So you can listen to the major triad, for instance, sounds like this. In 31, and then some options of altering or changing the notes of this triad by diasis up or down. For instance, and it's a triad with an altered fundamental. This one is with an altered fifth. Third, with a lowered third, lowered fundamental, and so on. So there are unlimited ways of intonating the functional third-based harmony with 31 diasis changed intonations. And I also made a system for this. Using new solmization words and other methods. And in fact, it's about for an improviser, because all those pieces I'm now writing for the singer and myself ought to be a basic harmonic structure for playing solo over it, so melodic solos. Over all those shifting progressions. So as an improviser, I need to visualize those harmonies, and one option is to visualize referring to the normal diatonic situation. In normal diatonic situation, this would sound like this. But there are some changed intonations.
So again, if you would play it on the piano, it would almost sound like this. In this case, since I was using this basic scale of the monotone tuning, it's differently intonated. Instead of resolving to the one also sounds different. It's not. The one is like a raised fundamental, as I was showing before. So. These chords in a basic reduction, like I play over a melodic minor chord, but I integrate different intonations of the same functional structure. And the last chord, it's quite different. The resolving point can be somewhere else, even over the size of a semitone. So it's not perfectly reducible to 12-tone harmony. It's just a reference to 12-tone harmony possible, but when transposing the structure again, you are landing somewhere that's not reachable with 12 tones. So I guess that's it. No.
Thank you for this demonstration, and I believe I found from my questions some answer. Yes, Georg, you can play Mikrotöne now. At first in the melody phase it's better, and the chords they are not Mikrotöne, but the alteration it is, and the movement and the melody form, that's all Mikrotonality. I think that is one example what is possible for us to explore with this new music. Yes, I think. Thank you very much.
So you said this is a lullaby?
Yes.
It is, do you have an English translation?
Yeah, I can give you, yeah.
I mean, maybe it's...
So, I'm the wind.
Yeah, I got that.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's whispering, yeah, maybe later, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can give you, of course, yeah. It's about the rhyme in German, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was there a motivation for this?
I don't know. So I had this sketch in my desk for 2 years, not knowing that it's going to be combined with these lyrics. But then I was singing the melody over and over, and then I had this idea. Yeah. So
the lyrics were written for the rhythm of the piece, for the harmonic rhythm of the piece.
Can you talk about the difference for you when you're playing the acoustic versus the electro?
Yeah, of course. So the acoustic first is a fifth lower. So it's either the decision to transpose in your head, or you take all the fingerings you have and it just sounds a fifth lower. And after a few minutes you get used to it or not. And also the playing technique is quite different. In this case the keys are heavy, but there is no aftertouch possibility. At the acoustic clavichord, it's all about the controlling the pitch, because if you release too fast, the tone is not there anymore. You need to keep the pressure, at the same time the hand should be very loose. So it's very different technique in comparison to the piano.
Do you feel about the sustain difference? Like for you to hear really the chordal qualities, do you feel it's more striking when it's sustained, or in the acoustic instrument you obviously have the overtone series is naturally occurring? I don't know if that's something you wish to elaborate on.
Yes, I could go into detail for this point more. I'm also planning this for the future, exploring sound on the instrument. So also for arpeggios or more chord oriented. But at the same time it also works for any other playing technique. And of course, since it's an acoustic instrument, I really prefer playing on this one, of course, because the interaction with the physics is more intense, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I love the presentation and the way it sounds. It's amazing. There's things that happen inside you when you listen to that music. But it reminded me slightly of the Tristan chord. Was that just or is that just coincidental?
Yeah, there's a reference. Although I'm not quoting any passage of music consciously.
Yeah.
But of course, and I want to use it kind of ironically, of course. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very calm and
So it's a lullaby with sort of Wagner existential.
not necessarily Wagner, but this let's say romantic gesture. Yeah. Also the content of this poem is there, although it's not purely the idea is not purely describing some. There's some really existential thinkings behind this poem, although one might not think that way. So I found it very fascinating to combine this very soft and style with some I think very existential thoughts I make. Although it's very hidden, but I can give some explanations, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and we'll listen to you in the concert this evening.
Yeah.
When does it begin? When is it? 7:30.
Yeah.
7:30. And in advance there is
Arche Blanco play
here in Sacellum.
Yes.
And we see that. Okay? Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.